Before we begin, a quick note. The opinions and analysis shared on Truth Seekers are our own interpretations of published research and should not be used as medical, financial, or professional advice. Always consult qualified professionals for decisions affecting your health or well-being.
And with that out of the way, welcome to Truth Seekers. I'm Bill Morrison.
And I'm Alex Barrett. Today is May 4, 2026, and we're talking about the Petri dish promise, what that viral exercise cancer study actually found.
Let's get to the truth.
Just 10 minutes of hard exercise sends powerful anti-cancer signals through your bloodstream. I saw that headline last week and I genuinely thought, okay, that's extraordinary. 10 minutes?
That was everywhere. My feeds were just drowning in it. And I'll be honest, even I felt a little pull of excitement before I actually read the study.
Which is exactly what worries me. Because when a claim is that clean, that perfectly shaped for a headline, 10 minutes, powerful anti-cancer effects, my old journalism brain starts twitching.
It's the kind of story that travels because it's telling people something they desperately want to hear. The fix is easy, accessible, something they can do today.
And cancer is, almost everyone listening has a reason to care about this personally.
Right.
That's the thing. It touches most families. So when a headline like this lands, people aren't just curious, they're hopeful. And that hope deserves honesty.
It really does. Because the actual study is genuinely interesting. It's just not what the headlines say it is. Not even close.
Right, so walk me through it. What did they actually do?
Okay, so the study came out of Newcastle University, published in the International Journal of Cancer late 2025. 30 healthy volunteers, ages 50 to 78. They did a roughly 10-minute maximal intensity cycling test. Genuinely hard, not a stroll. Blood samples collected before and immediately after.
All right, so far that tracks with the headline. Exercise, blood, signals.
Hold on. Here's where it gets interesting. They didn't track what happened inside those 30 people's bodies over time. What they did was take the post exercise blood, extract the serum,
The serum being the liquid part.
right, no cells, just the liquid. And then they put that serum onto cancer cells in a lab dish.
Sorry, they put the blood onto cancer cells in a Petri dish. A Petri dish, yes. Huh.
The cancer cells were never inside a human. No cancer patient was involved in this study at any point. 30 healthy people exercised. Their blood was drawn, and that blood serum was used almost like a pharmaceutical, applied directly to isolated colon cancer cells in a controlled lab environment.
That is such a wildly different thing to what the headline implies. Exercise sends powerful signals to cancer cells. I'm picturing someone's body, blood moving, a tumour responding. Not a dish in a laboratory in Newcastle.
Exactly. And when they applied that serum to the cancer cells, they found something genuinely remarkable for a mechanistic study. Over 1,300 genes changed their activity in those cancer cells. Some genes involved in rapid cell division dialed down. Some genes involved in DNA repair actually increased.
Okay.
In a Petri dish, the post exercise serum appeared to suppress cancer cell growth.
And does that mean exercise fights cancer in the body?
That is the question this study specifically cannot answer. And okay, I want to nerd out for a second here because there's a distinction that almost never makes it into the coverage and it drives me absolutely mad.
Go on then.
So in science, there are these two terms: in vitro, Latin for in glass, which means the experiment happened outside a living body, in lab equipment, and in vivo, in the living, which means inside an actual organism. This Newcastle study is 100% in vitro.
Right. And I know Latin phrases can feel like a minor technical detail, but the gap between those two things is genuinely enormous. It's actually, there's a reason we even have separate words for it, because they behave that differently.
So differently that we essentially treat them as different categories of evidence, which, now that I think about it, is sort of interesting because the terminology only really got standardized in the 20th century, even though people had been doing lab experiments on cells for decades before that.
Bill,
Yeah, sorry, that's a whole other thing. The point is, enormous gap. How enormous?
that's what I was going to ask, yes.
Okay, so when we look at promising findings from lab studies, even animal studies, which are already a step closer to humans than a Petri dish, somewhere between 89 and 95% of them fail to translate into human treatments. And then, even for cancer drugs that look promising enough to enter clinical trials,
Wait, I thought it was around 90% of lab findings that fail, not 89 to 95?
no, it's actually the range I said, 89 to 95. And then separately, over 95% of cancer drugs that get far enough to enter clinical trials still fail FDA approval. So there are two different failure rates stacked on top of each other. We're not even at the clinical trial stage with this study.
Right, okay. So the vast majority of things that look incredible in a lab never become anything in a human body.
The vast majority. Not because the science is bad, because biology in a dish and biology in a living person are completely different problems.
Although, and I want to push back on this slightly, doesn't that just make it sound like the study shouldn't have been done? Because those failure rates sound almost damning.
No, no, this is actually where I think I'd push back on you.
Go on then.
Those failure rates aren't an indictment of this study. That's how basic science is supposed to work. You don't skip petri dishes and go straight to cancer patients. That would be genuinely dangerous and unethical. The petri dish is step one. You're supposed to have a 90% attrition rate as you move up the evidence ladder. The problem isn't that this study exists, it's that the headline pretends it's the last rung, not the first.
Okay, yeah, that's fair actually. I was reading those numbers as a failure of the research, and you're right, they're not. They're a feature of the process.
Exactly. The process working correctly looks like a lot of things failing at early stages. That's the filter doing its job.
Right, okay, I'll concede that. But, and there's a specific reason this particular step is such a big leap, isn't there? You mentioned the tumour environment earlier.
Yeah, this is key. In a petri dish, you have cancer cells in a sterile, controlled environment, just the cells and the serum they were bathed in for 24 hours. In an actual human body, a tumor is surrounded by other cell types, blood vessels, immune cells, connective tissue. The immune system is constantly interacting with it. Hormones are fluctuating, organ systems are involved. That complexity is what makes cancer so hard to treat, and a petri dish doesn't capture any of it.
So, applying serum to isolated cancer cells in a dish is almost like testing whether a fire extinguisher works by spraying it on a single burning photograph rather than an actual house fire.
That's actually quite good.
Thank you.
You might successfully put out the photograph. That tells you almost nothing about the house.
And here's what really gets me, because this is the pattern I watched play out over and over again when I was covering health stories. The actual press release from Newcastle used very careful language. It said these findings could lead to new therapies that imitate or augment the biological effects of exercise. Could, might, opens the door to.
Hmm.
That's the scientists being appropriately humble about what they actually proved.
Those words are doing enormous scientific work. Could lead to future research is a fundamentally different claim from triggers powerful anti-cancer effects in your body.
By the time it hits a headline, could becomes does. The conditional tense just vanishes. And I remember watching this happen in real time when I was in the newsroom. A wire story would come through. The original would say, maybe associated with. And by the time it got a headline, it was causes. Every single time. The sub-editors weren't being malicious. They were just, headlines need certainty. Uncertainty doesn't click.
And millions of people read the headline. Almost none of them read the methodology.
Almost none.
I used to be on the data side of exactly this dynamic, and it's uncomfortable to admit. When I was doing analytics work, the way findings got packaged for maximum reach almost always involved stripping out the uncertainty. And that's where all the important information lives.
Now, I want to be clear about this because I think it matters. The researchers themselves aren't the villains here. The study is legitimate science. Dr. Orange at Newcastle is doing exactly what basic mechanistic research should do, identifying a potential pathway that might explain something bigger.
Completely. And the broader claim that exercise protects against cancer is actually solid. There's strong epidemiological evidence, the kind where you follow large populations over years and decades, showing that regular exercise reduces colorectal cancer risk by around 20 to 24%.
But that's proved by watching hundreds of thousands of real people over time.
Not a Petri dish. And the Newcastle study is asking a different question entirely. Not, does exercise reduce cancer risk, but what's one possible mechanism that might partially explain why? That's a worthwhile question. It's just not a clinical finding. It's a clue.
And even as a clue, it's a narrow one. The study only tested the acute response to a single 10-minute session. 30 healthy people who didn't have cancer. No chronic effect measured, no cancer patients, no immune system involvement, the whole thing outside the body. That's a lot of gaps between serum changed gene expression in a dish and exercise fights cancer.
The research itself acknowledges this. It's exploratory, mechanistic, a first step. And honestly, I have a lot of respect for the paper's own language. The authors don't overclaim. It's the kind of thing that belongs at a biochemistry conference as a promising preliminary finding, not plastered across every wellness platform as a breakthrough.
So what do we actually take away?
Here's where I land. Exercise genuinely does reduce cancer risk. That's real, supported by decades of population data. This study offers one small potential piece of the puzzle for how. But we are many, many steps away from knowing whether these specific molecular signals matter clinically in humans. The Petri dish is the beginning of a long road.
And for anyone listening who's hoping this means 10 minutes on a bike could treat cancer, that is not what this shows. Not yet, and possibly not ever, depending on how future research goes.
The thing to watch for in future stories: anytime a headline makes a strong clinical claim, check whether the underlying study was done in cells, in animals, or in actual humans with the condition being described. If it's cells or animals, the story needs the word preliminary stamped across it.
And look for the conditionals in the original research. Could, might, may, because scientists use those words carefully. When a headline removes them, it's removing the actual scientific meaning.
The research is worth being interested in. worth following. It's just not worth changing your treatment plan over, because it was never about treatment at all.
Exercise because the evidence genuinely supports it, not because of one Petri dish in Newcastle, however exciting the headlines made it sound. Right, that's all for today's dive into the data. Just remember, everything we've discussed is our interpretation of published research and shouldn't replace professional medical advice.
Absolutely. If you're dealing with health or mental concerns, talk to your doctor, not just us data nerds on a podcast.
I'm Alex Barrett,
And I'm Bill Morrison
and we'll see you next time.
on Truth Seekers.
Until then, question everything.
But verify with data.